My wife cheated, got pregnant and demanded alimony, so I let her think she won. She cheated. She lied. Then tried to ruin my life. But I stayed quiet, and destroyed her without saying a word. I remember the night so clearly, the kind of night that rewrites the shape of things. Rain tapping the balcony, the city lights smeared into a blur. Ashley came home late, breathless and smelling like someone else's aftershave. She dropped her keys on the counter and asked if I'd left the kettle on. I did the small, automatic things, the nod, the smile, and pretended not to notice the way her fingers lingered on the rim of her mug before she walked into the bedroom. We'd been married 6 years. We met in a class neither of us meant to take, a stupid elective on typography that turned into coffee, then late-night walks, then moving in together. I loved her with the kind of quiet conviction that makes people stick to small promises, to pick up milk, to listen after a bad day, to show up. We built a life from ordinary bricks. Weekend errands, a couch we fought over, a balcony garden that thrived on neglect, inside jokes. It was a steady warmth. That's why the winter morning when the warmth went cold still surprises me, because it didn't happen with thunder. It happened with a small, ordinary thing, a message on a phone screen, a tone I couldn't unhear. Her phone was on the counter, unlocked. A message preview glowed, "Can't wait to see you tonight, Red Heart, T." I looked at the name and felt the first tightness in my chest. Did Thomas? A coworker? A friend? The message didn't make a sound dramatic enough to pull me out of the restful skin of our life, but it was a fissure. She got home at dawn, sleepy and apologetic, with lipstick smudged on a collar I never noticed before. She said it was overtime, that she fell asleep at her desk, that we could talk about it later. I nodded and made coffee. I told myself it was nothing. Trust is stubborn like that. It wants to be blind. Weeks passed and the fissure grew. Small things at first. Receipts for hotels tucked between couch cushions, a credit card charge from a city she claimed she hadn't visited, a voicemail she said was spam. I tried to speak about it, careful, tentative questions, and she deflected with a laugh or a sigh. "You're being paranoid," she'd say, and wrap her arms around me like reassurance was a cure. It should have been, but the knot in my stomach tightened. In the quiet nights, I began to watch the edges of our life. Her phone on the nightstand, the way her text tone made her smile in private. Love doesn't blind you to the truth forever. Sometimes it just delays the moment you choose to see. One night, when the apartment smelled of rain and the kettle was still warm, she sat at the kitchen table with me and said very casually, "I'm pregnant." The words were ordinary, like a weather report. I expected joy to swell, a stupid grin or tears. Instead, she leaned forward and added, as if delivering a piece of news, "It's not yours." Time narrowed to the seconds it took me to breathe. My throat went dry. She had the audacity to look at me with a small, satisfied smile, as if proclaiming this was a victory I hadn't earned. "You'll still pay," she said. "You'll still support me. You owe me." It was the way she said it, so composed, so precise, that made the moment into a razor. She imagined herself clever, like someone who'd discovered the rules of a game and was now playing them. I could have screamed. I could have slammed things, broken dishes, exposed her infidelity like a flare to the night. I didn't. I simply said, "Okay," and nodded once, slow and deliberate. She beamed. She'd expected drama, an outburst. Instead she found a man who looked like he'd accepted defeat. That smile, it was the kind that seals a win in someone's mind. She left the room feeling triumphant, and in that triumph she showed me everything. Her entitlement, her calculation, the quiet confidence of someone who thinks she's figured out how the world bends. I spent the next days like a man in a waiting room. My anger didn't need an outlet. It needed a plan. Rage is loud and fast, but strategy is patient and cold. I started collecting facts. Not because I wanted to humiliate, though perhaps a part of me welcomed the justice, but because the truth felt like a currency I needed before words could be safe. I took pictures of receipts, made copies of bank statements, saved messages when I could. I did not hack phones, nor did I dial pay for spy services. I kept my methods legal. Screenshots of messages she accidentally sent to the wrong group, her location tags she forgot to disable, receipts I could tie to timestamps. The difference between being righteous and being reckless is often in the way you collect your evidence. There were moments when I hated myself for being so calm. Friends called and I laughed like everything was normal. At work I kept a routine. But at night I sat with a lawyer I contacted quietly. He was 3 shades of bland and very useful. He explained the prenup she had signed years earlier. A clause we'd both joked about in a fit of early marriage hubris, that infidelity would void any claim to alimony or joint property. Back then it felt like a bad joke. Now it felt like an insurance policy for my dignity. She'd never read it carefully, she'd barely glanced at it. People sign things while in love and assume legal documents follow the romance. Thomas existed on my phone as a name I saw in photos and messages I screenshot. He was married, that became my first real weapon. I reached out discreetly to his wife, Sarah, because some truths are heavier in someone else's hands. I didn't send rage or hate. I sent facts, dates, screenshots, times. Her response was a single sentence at first: "I've been waiting for this." Then the flood. She had noticed missed anniversaries, unexplained trips, tiny absences. Her voice, when we finally spoke, was raw and broken. I offered what I had and told her I'd be available whenever she wanted more. She wanted more, and she came with a fury that was both terrifying and cleansing. Ashley's reaction to being questioned publicly was predictable. She doubled down. She called friends and told a story where she was the victim. A neglectful husband who had emotionally abandoned her. My cruel silence had been spun into cruelty itself. People rallied, as people often do, around the most sympathetic version of any story until they know otherwise. Her social circle took her side like a reflex. It stung because reality is often messy. Perception is easier to weaponize. She filed for divorce fast, with a certainty that surprised even her. She claimed emotional neglect and said she deserved support because she was carrying a child. Her lawyers were polite and expensive. She submitted documents that painted our life as one-sided. I worked, she kept the house, she gave up opportunities to support my career. It's a story many judges hear. The quieter partner is the one whose sacrifices are framed as selfless. I could have countered in anger, but I had better tools: paper, signatures, timestamps, the prenup. I handed everything to my lawyer and trusted the system to do what I needed it to do: reveal the truth. I watched her walk into the courthouse on the day of the hearing like a queen entering a theater, confident. To her advantage, she had the performance. She wore a coat she had bought a month earlier, a bag that cost more than my rent used to be, a smile painted on. Her first stride was a victory lap. She sat in the witness chair and began the narrative she had rehearsed: alone, betrayed, owed for her sacrifices. The gallery of friends nodded. I watched her through the glass of the courthouse corridor and memorized the way her jaw tightened when she thought no one could see. Then the evidence came out. Not like a dramatic reveal in a movie, it was quiet, procedural, devastating. My lawyer produced screenshots, messages where she planned rendezvous, a voicemail she'd accidentally sent to a work group that captured her voice talking about keeping him, and how easy everything had been. The prenup was read aloud, words that, years ago, had resonated like a joke echoed with new meaning. Infidelity voids claims. And Sarah, the injured wife, appeared with her own file of proof that Thomas had been lying about his status. The judge listened and then asked simple, formal questions that had the power to strip away theater. When your life is supported by lies, a competent judge can see the scaffolding and ask for the beams to be removed. Ashley's face changed, subtly at first, then with real collapse. The confidence she had worn like armor cracked. Her lawyer stammered, "Surprised forensic messages are harder to spin." The gallery that had nodded now shifted uncomfortably. Human audiences don't like to reconcile contradictions. They prefer to follow whichever story has more evidence. When the judge denied her claim to alimony and dismissed the most damaging financial requests, the air in the courtroom changed. It wasn't a grand vindication, it was a quiet rearrangement of facts. She left the room white-faced. I felt nothing triumphant in that instant. The heartache of betrayal doesn't dissolve into joy because the law is on your side. Instead, a different kind of pain moves in, the small, quiet satisfaction that truth made its way back into the world. But the fallout did not stop at the courthouse. Thomas's wife, Sarah, was determined. She confronted him with the files I'd helped compile and, within days, filed for divorce. He vanished from the office like a man whose life had been peeled back to bone. HR at Ashley's workplace received an anonymous packet. I did not send it. Sarah did, with the documents I'd provided. The packet contained text messages and a timeline that reflected poorly on moral clauses written into Ashley's contract. HR moved to investigate. The company's PR machine is merciless. They protect their revenue, not reputations that can't withstand a scandal. Within a month, Ashley was put on unpaid leave pending an internal review. The designer life that had seemed so glamorous began to erode into a succession of administrative calls and cold corporate emails. She called me the night she'd been placed on leave. Her voice was ragged, not like the composure she'd worn in court. "You set me up," she said between sobs. "You wanted this." She said it like it would hurt me. Instead, it landed on my face like rain, cold, expected, and oddly clean. I didn't set you up, I said. You set yourself up.